Okay, Dr. Samuels, I believe we have everyone and we're ready.
Good evening to everyone, and thank you so very much for joining us this evening for a business meeting. Today, Monday, March 15th, 2021, I would officially like to call the meeting to order. As we call the meeting to order, Mrs. Anderson, would you please be kind enough to conduct roll call?
Mr. Pittman. Mr. Pittman. Ms. Fowler.
Thank you. I'm here. I couldn't unmute. Thank
Yeah,
you.
sorry about that.
That's okay, Adam.
Should be good now.
Ms. Fowler.
I'm here.
Mr. Williams.
Present.
Mr. Thompson, leader.
Here.
Ms. Robinson.
Here.
Mr. Thompson.
Here.
Ms. Buckwalk. Ms. Carreras.
Present.
Mr. Carter.
I'm not sure if you can see Miss Buckwalk is here.
Yeah, I have it. Thank you. Dr. Samuels.
Present.
Mr. Selmer.
Present.
Ms. Anderson is present.
Thank you very much. I would now ask that we pause our videos in preparation for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I would like to move forward and officially approve the meeting minutes from February 16th, 2021. I would further like to approve the agenda for Monday, March 15th, 2021. Ms. Anderson, public comment?
There are no public comments for this evening.
Thank you. As we continue with our meeting this evening, there are several presentations. Mr. Selmer, would you please guide us through the presentations?
Yes, Dr. Samuels, good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
And our first presenter tonight is Mr. Carl Hogan from BBD LLC. He's going to present a brief update on the 1920 fiscal audit. So, Mr. Hogan, thank you for joining us this evening.
All right, I had to change my desk around. It looked like I was in the witness protection program there for a second. So, but maybe look at my wife's Disney stuff in the background. Mr. Selmer invited me here tonight. We are in the process of wrapping up our 2019-2020 audit. You know, you're in the process halfway through the 2021 school year. You're in the process of doing the 21-22 budget. So the numbers are nailed down related to the audit. We're just in the process of wrapping up our work and wrapping up, you know, the full financial statements. But management really thought it was important that we get in front of the board and the receiver and to kind of disclose what the financial results are going to be. I don't anticipate any changes from what I'm going to present here tonight, just to kind of give everybody a frame of reference where the school district ended up for the year ended June 30th, 2020. That being said, it was definitely a, I wouldn't say a rough year, but with COVID, the change in the transition within the administration there, it took a little bit longer than anticipated, but we're here. And, the good news is the financial results are good. So that's the positive, maybe a little late, but things are look good how they ended up for 2019-2020. Before I start going through the numbers, I just want everybody to know we anticipate to have a unmodified or a clean audit report. I think that's really important, the most important thing in the audit. So the numbers being presented here tonight, we consider to be fairly presented as presented here tonight. Do I have the ability to share my screen?
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. So what I've done here tonight is just pulled out a couple snippets of the audit report that kind of highlight the modified accrual basis of accounting or the basis of accounting that you prepare your annual budget. So what I've started with here in my presentation is the budget to actual schedule for the general fund, which is your operating fund and obviously your main audit or your main fund that the district does its operations out of. So one thing I want to highlight is there's two columns. There's an original budget, and this is the budget that was adopted at the end of June 30th, 2019, that was rolled forward into the year. And then there's a final budget number. Now the final budget number is different than the original budget number by quite a bit. And this was the budget that was put together after the receiver took over and the new budget was prepared in accordance, with what was asked for by the state. So the original budget was prepared June 30th, 2019, and the final budget was prepared somewhere around mid of the year, kind of presented around February, March of 2020. So as you can see up at the top, total revenues were budgeted. I'm going to speak within the final budget because that's what's being compared to the actual numbers here. Your total revenues were budgeted at $157 million. They came in less than budget by $151.6 million. There's a couple reasons for this that I'll go over at the top here. Your local source revenues, we went into the COVID-19 pandemic. Everybody, a lot of my school districts I work with really anticipated a shortfall in their local source revenues. I did see some of that at some of the school districts, but in the case of Harrisburg, tax revenues were really strong right through the finish of the year and actually finished over budget by $3.1 million. State source revenues were $3.3 million less than budget, and this is being driven by expenditures down below that were less than budget. So the state reimburses the school district for Social Security and for retirement, like approximately 50% of those costs. And because of the fact that you had some expenditures that we're going to go over below that were less than anticipated in the salary line item, the reimbursements that were anticipated for these retirement and for the Social Security were less than budget. So this offset in revenue is being shown down below with an offset in expenditures likewise. So they kind of net out from a budget perspective. Federal source revenues were less than budget by $5.1 million. Most of this is related to your title funds. Number one, because of the fact that you are not able to expend them related to COVID-19. In addition, there was some carryover funds from issues in previous years that weren't spent either. So even though you had a amount that was under budget here by $5.1 million, these are cost reimbursement grants. And I anticipate these amounts will roll over to next year. So once again, these partially these revenues that weren't recognized, the expenditures weren't recognized, these are and weren't offset. So at the end of the day, the offset of the more than anticipated local source revenues were offset by the decreases. So ultimately, when you look at it, the $5.3 million being less than budget compared to the $157 million, when you look at that from a percentage wise, isn't that bad, and it kind of offsets down here below. As we come down here below to the expenditures, we audited a lot of school districts, and what you're going to see here with amounts being less than budget is across the board, across the state, a lot of school districts are having expenditures that were less than budget because of the fact that if you think about it, it only makes sense. There's contracted services, substitute services. When everything shut down in March, there were health insurance, so people couldn't go to the doctor. You're self-funded. So if people can't go to the doctor, then they can't get the services that they needed. So across the board, across the expenditures, primarily within regular programs, you're going to see here, ultimately, your total expenditures were almost $11 million under budget compared to what was budgeted for the year ended 2019-2020. So like I said, some of that amounts under budget were offset by these cost reimbursement state and federal grants. But ultimately, the $11 million was under budget, and it was not unusual across the state. You know, you also had student transportation services, you had buildings closed, et cetera. So it's kind of a, good and bad, in terms of, you like to have been open, but at the same time, it did save the district some money, 2019, 2020. Also, we have some other financing sources uses related to transfers out. There were some savings there related to debt service, and then the budgetary reserve, some of that was used during the year. So at the end of the day, after you did your revised budget in the middle of last year, you anticipated to use $1.8 million of your fund balance. You actually added $7 million of fund balance. And at the end of the day, you had $15 million at the beginning of the year, and then $22 million at the end of the year related to your general fund balance. And I'll kind of look at the allocation of that fund balance and the assignments related to it. Any questions, concerns? All right. The next page I'm going to kind of go over here. So we kind of went over the ins and the outs for the year. Now we're going to kind of look as of June 30th, 2020, where your assets and your liabilities were, and the excess of the assets over those liabilities being the fund balance that I just talked about, the $22 million. So here we go. We have your general fund, total assets, $52.7 million. Most of this is made up of cash and investments, taxes receivable, and amounts that are due from primarily PDE at year end related to reimbursements. It's come down below. Liabilities were $19.9 million. And then you had some deferred inflows or resources related to your property taxes. So if you take the two of those combined, you have about $29 million. The only fluctuation I really want to talk about here is the accrued salaries, payroll, withholdings, and benefits. This is primarily made up of, if you think about it, it makes sense. Teachers and earn their pay through June 30th, but they get paid out through the summer. So this is the amount that's paid to the teachers through the summer for services through June 30th, but paid out through August. The previous year, there was $15.2 million related to this. There's also an amount in here for PSERS. PSERS is paid quarterly. There was a payment that was late in the previous year, so that's why you see the decrease year over year. So the previous year, accrued salaries, payroll, withholdings, and benefits included 2 quarters due to PSERS, whereas the district was on top of their payments for the current year and only owned 1 quarter at the end of, as of June 30th, 2020. So the excess, like I spoke about, the assets over the liabilities, here's that $22 million we just spoke about. So the board, or the school district, has a fund balance policy that the board adopted, and that fund balance policy is right in line with PDE. Now, PDE will only allow you to have 8% of your next year's expenditure budget in this amount, your unassigned fund balance. So what management has to do, and the receiver has to assign fund balance or commit fund balance for one-time non-recurring expenditures. So as in the past, there was a committed amount, which was board approved in the past. And then there's an assigned amount for capital improvements, the $7 million. This has you have the option of keeping the capital improvements amount in the general fund, which gives you flexibility, or to put it in the capital reserve fund. Management has decided to keep it in the general fund to give that flexibility in case that money needs to be reallocated at a future time. Also, in addition to the current year, the board or management has allocated $1 million for a healthcare reserve. I know there's been some discussions about setting up a separate reserve in an internal service fund. So this is money being put aside for future claims. So once these amounts are taken out from the total fund balance, that puts you at $12 million within your unassigned fund balance, and that's within the 8% for your 2020-21 budget and in compliance with PDE. So ultimately, the school district was in a really good financial position as of the end of the year to take on any kind of unanticipated expenditures, not only in 2021 and moving forward related to not only COVID-19, but other capital projects that may come along, et cetera. Any questions so far? All right. So this is, once again, this is the income statement here. I just wanted to kind of point out, there's also a capital projects fund, as you can see up above. There's $300,000, nothing really to note there. There is a debt service fund. I'm going to go back up here real quick. But the debt service fund is restricted. Back in 2008, 2009, the school district took out qualified school construction bonds under the ERA program that were interest-free. So they kind of operate a little bit differently than your typical bonds. So these amounts are being put in escrow in a Wells Fargo account, and they can't be touched. They're in U.S. Treasury notes, and they can't be touched until the bonds mature later on in 2029, 2027. So the only amount that's really available for the school district within the debt service fund is just a small amount, $338,000. I want to talk a little bit about the food service fund. I kind of put a little separate spreadsheet together here. I felt like the financial statements related to it were confusing and didn't really give the full picture of the food service fund, because they work on the full accrual basis of accounting and include stuff like changes in your actuarial liabilities and your depreciation expense. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to take out those non-cash items and kind of show a picture of what the food service fund is actually losing from operations on an annual basis. So in 2019 and 2020, the fund lost, upwards of $600,000 in 2019 and $678,000 in 2020. And the only place that this is coming from is the general fund. So currently, the general fund is owed about $1.8 million from the food service fund. And at this current rate, the school district is not, or the food service fund is not liquid enough to be able to pay that back. So I just want to point out real quick, in this number up here, the 22 million, there's that $1.8 million. I kind of segregated that in non-spendable because currently the food service operations doesn't have any liquid assets as of June 30th, 2020 to pay that back. So I didn't want to include that in your unassigned fund balance and think it's available to be spent because it's not available to be spent. And I put it in non-spendable and until it's determined how it's going to be paid back or if it'll be ultimately written off. So coming back down here, current assets, current liabilities, we'll kind of go over that in a second, but the unrestricted net position related to current assets and current liabilities, you can see this $1.5 million and this $1 million is all being driven by the amount that's due to the general fund. So the bills need to be paid, the general fund's ponying it up. Primarily, most of that's related to the general fund's paying the payroll, and then they're just not getting reimbursed, most of it related to that. So the food service fund is primarily paying the third service provider, but that portion for in-house is being primarily floated by the general fund. And just to kind of show you, right down here, down below, there's that due to other funds, 1.7, $950,000. There's a smaller piece related to a small fund, but ultimately it's about $1.8 million. That's due to the general fund from the food service, just a matter. So although the general fund does currently have the funds, I guess what needs to be determined is, will the food service fund generate enough cash in the future to pay that down? If not, do we need to write that amount off, et cetera? So just a decision to be made. And that is it. So does anybody have any questions, concerns? Comments?
Mr. Hogan, just if that food service analysis sheet, if you could page back up.
Yeah.
Right there. So can you just explain and delineate when you look at revenues, expenses, and the over under? So in 2019, it was 844,000.
Yeah.
In 2020, it's 376. Can you just explain those numbers as well?
Yeah. Well, what's throwing those off is these numbers right here. So that's why I added them. So this number right here. So as you can see right down here, down below, unlike there's different bases of accounting that are being accounted for. The food service fund isn't accounted for on the same basis of accounting as your general fund, your capital projects. In accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, I have to account for the net pension liability and all this other stuff that you don't normally account for on a budget basis. So what I did here in my analysis up above, the change in these long-term liabilities, I added them or subtracted them back, whatever was being in here, and got to the point where the 600,000. So this is the actual, you want to say, for the most part, cash that is being lost from operations.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure that.
So this up above is including all these non-cash items like depreciation expense, but for purposes is not that important. What you're concerned about is what cash is coming in and what cash is going out related to the food service operations.
That's correct. And the board and the public may be aware, about a year ago, we were starting to look, more deeply into our food service program right before COVID hit. And, as an administration, we're concerned with these numbers, especially that we're a community eligibility provision district. And this is something, as we return to more normal operations, will certainly be something we resume an evaluation of as we move into the next school year. So, and I appreciate you sharing these numbers.
Yeah, and then this will give you something like a frame of reference where you were going into this year. Unfortunately, when I spoke with, like I've said to you before, I've talked to management about this already, is that unfortunately the 2021 budget you put together bears no semblance of what really happened. I mean, I think when everybody was putting their budget together, everybody assumed we'd be back in school in September, October, and that didn't really happen. So I'm assuming we're going to see various fluctuations we saw up here at the top, for the current year as well coming in, just because of the fact that things didn't go as planned. If you didn't think things went as planned for this year because of COVID-19, it's even going to be more so for, or just as much for 2021.
And I just, one other comment, Mr. Hogan, and I just, as kind of a reminder for everyone, because it's been, 18 months, but there's been a lot happening, especially with COVID. November of 19, our acting CFO did a presentation for the board, and she provided a revised analysis that if we would have built the budget based on, having information and being here the entire year, what our projections for revenues and expenses would have been. And when I reflected back on that, our revenues ended up about 152 million. We were projecting just shy of 150 based on what I would have presented if we would have been here longer, as an administration. And our revised expenses we came up with projected were about 152. And we ended up around overall about 144, which is about a $7 million. So when I look at, where we ended up and kind of what we put together based on not having a lot of information, in our first 90 days, we ended up in a similar place minus COVID. And so I think there was three factors that really drove this variance. One, as you alluded to, Mr. Hogan, is COVID. The second is we were anticipating that based on things we were looking at and revamping, that we were going to end 1920 with a surplus, probably closer to $2 million, not $7 million. And then, open positions also played into this number as well. So when I look at what you presented, it seems to make sense to me based on the reflection of the 1920 school year and everything we were working through. So I just want to thank you for your work and your analysis.
I just try to keep it at a high level and just kind of, I think everybody knew this, but just wanted to put it on paper.
I'm going to ask Dr. Samuels, do you have any questions for Mr. Hogan before we move on?
No, thank you very much. I know this has been a very, very unusual year. We thank you and your team for, your due diligence. We look forward to, this being finalized because there's so many things that are, contingent upon this audit. So thank you very much. And
I just want to thank everybody. It was everybody was very super cooperative in terms of getting the information, and everybody kind of worked together as a team in this odd year because everybody was new, and everybody kind of worked together to, get the information together to be able to present this.
Thank you again. And we know that, school districts engage in internal audits annually, and an audit is an opportunity to learn. And that's what we intend to, continue to do through this process. So thank you.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Hogan, for being with us this evening. We're going to move on to our next presentation, which is our Title I Annual Parent and Family Engagement Update with Dr. Latrice Mumine, who's our Director of Accountability. Dr. Mumine.
Thank you, Mr. Selmer. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining the virtual annual Title I parent meeting for the 2020-21 school year. Next slide. The purpose of this presentation is to provide helpful information about Title I, II, III, and IV funding that supplements our educational program in the Harrisburg School District. Key topics include Title I, II, III, and IV funding sources, parent and family engagement policy, school parent compact, teacher qualifications, right to know, annual evaluation, federal programs monitoring, complaints, and who to contact. Next slide, please. Title I, a 100% federally funded supplemental education program, is designed to help students meet state content and performance standards. The funds support improving basic programs. Next slide. Our annual parent meeting is required by federal guidelines for Title I schools to explain and discuss Title I school-wide programs. Next slide. What is a Title I school? Our Title I schools are schools that receive Title I Part A dollars. The Harrisburg School District is Title I district-wide. These dollars can be used to support programs by identifying students experiencing academic difficulties and providing timely assistance, purchasing supplemental resources, and conducting parent and family engagement meetings, trainings, and activities. Next slide. The Harrisburg School District is required to set aside 1% of funds for parent and family engagement strategies. The district welcomes parent feedback in planning programs and services for students. Please contact the principal and/or family engagement specialist at your school for more information. Next slide. Our Title I Parent and Family Engagement ESSA requirements. The Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA, requires Title I schools and families to work together. Each school shall jointly develop with and distribute to parents and family members of participating children a Title I school parent compact. Next slide. Title II, Part A, supporting effective instruction. Title II, Part A funds support effective instruction. This includes teacher and principal training and recruitment. Key areas of professional development can include, but are not limited to, improving student teaching and learning, teacher and principal evaluation systems, recruitment and retention, technology integration, English learners, safety, and chronic absenteeism. Next slide. Title III, language instruction for English learners. Title III funds support language instruction for English learners. It is designed to improve the education of limited English proficient children and youth, as well as offers enhanced instruction opportunities for immigrant children and youth. Key areas of support with Title III funds includes co-teaching classes with English-only support, sheltered English content classes, which includes integrating language and content instruction, intervention for literacy instruction, professional development for teachers, staff, and administrators, and family engagement resources. Next slide. Title IV, Part A, student support and academic enrichment, provides financial assistance for students, which includes well-rounded educational opportunities, student health and safety, effective technology use, stakeholder engagement, comprehensive needs assessment, and professional development. The Harrisburg School District receives, again, Title I, II, III, and IV, and for the 2021 school year, a total dollar amount of $8,284,852. For each of those allocations, Title I allocation was $6,993,643. Title II, $627,435. Title III, $223,559. And Title IV, $440,215. This allocation includes non-public schools for eligible students in the city of Harrisburg. Working together, the 2021 Improvement Plan, Family Engagement Policy, and School Parent Compact are all examples of collaboration of families working together with the district for the needs of students. Next slide. The Parent and Family Engagement Policy provides guidance on program implementation, and it includes convening an annual meeting as we're holding today, providing a flexible number of meetings which would occur with the district and at individual schools, engaging parents in an organized, ongoing, and timely way in the planning, review, and improvement of the Parent and Family Engagement Program. Next slide. Providing timely information about parent and family engagement activities, providing information to parents about curriculum and assessment and decision-making in this area. And Title I parents have the right to be involved in the development of the school policy. Next slide. District and school Title I parent and family engagement revisions. The district and school policies for parent and family engagement are reviewed annually. The process for updating these policies includes providing parents an opportunity to review and give feedback on these policies. The district Title I parent and family engagement policy 918 was last updated in June of 2020. Please share comments and feedback on this district policy no later than Monday, April 12, 2021 at policyreview@hbgsd.us. Policy 918, Title I Parent and Family Engagement can be found on the district website at hbgsd.us under the board policies. Principals have shared the school level policies this year with their respective school communities for 2021 and made revisions. Thank you. The annually revised School Parent Compact is an agreement between schools and parents that allows for addressing high quality curriculum and instruction, describing how stakeholders share the responsibility for improving student academic achievement. Next slide. Stressing the importance of frequent communication and affirming the importance of parents and families in decisions, educational decisions related to the education of their children. Thank you. Next slide. Teacher qualifications. Schools are required to notify parents that they have the right to request information regarding the qualifications of their child's teacher. Parents must follow the school procedures to request the information. Please check your school office or email our district office at federal programs at hbg.us to learn more about the requirements. Thank you. Next slide. Annual evaluation. In addition to the annual review of parent and family engagement policies, the educational program for the district must also be evaluated. This includes the data and input that supports continuous improvement, which may be in the form of parent questionnaires and surveys, focus groups, or parent advisory committee input at the school level. These sources of data inform our next steps in the district for school improvement. Next slide. Federal programs monitoring. Periodically, the Harrisburg School District is monitored by the Division of Federal Programs in the Pennsylvania Department of Education. The federal programs monitoring is guided by a monitoring tool that outlines key fiscal and program component requirements. Next slide. The consolidated application for Titles 1, 2, 3, and 4, which we have described in the funding amounts shared. The application is created each year for these funds, and the application aligns to the Title 1, 2, 3, and 4 areas of focus described in this presentation today. The process includes assessing program needs, program planning with stakeholder engagement, setting performance goals, program implementation, and ongoing progress monitoring, as well as reporting. And strengthening the partnership between the district, parents, guardians, families, the school community, and other stakeholders, the Harrisburg School District informs its partners that Title I requires communication of the district complaint policy, Board Policy 906. With this effort, it includes making available individuals and groups the opportunity of a fair, adequate, and expeditious hearing on any problems or points of information they may have. It also includes any misunderstanding between the public and the school district, which shall be resolved with direct discussion of informal type among interested parties. Next slide. When such informal meetings fail, formal procedures occur. This includes investigating any alleged aggrieved act, and these forms may be completed at the school level by reaching out to a principal, guidance office, or others within the school, as well as the administration building at the district level. These forms shall then be filled out and filed with the superintendent for action. Next slide. Contact your principal at your individual school for more information about programs and family engagement specialist support. Next slide. Contact information for each school leader and family engagement specialist can be found in the remaining slides of this presentation. This includes Ben Franklin and Camp Curtin, Downey and Foose, the academies at Hamilton and Harrisburg High School John Harris campus, Marshall Math and Science Academy and Melrose School, Roland Academy and Harrisburg High School Sci-Tech campus, Scott School and Cougar Academy HVLA, as well as the HVLA program across the schools. District contact information for federal programs in the Office of Accountability is also listed here. Please email questions about the annual Title I parent meeting presentation to federal programs at hbgsd.us. This presentation will be posted to our district website in English and Spanish. In addition, a communication informing parents about the English and Spanish versions of this presentation will be provided to school leaders so it can be shared with their school communities respectfully. Thank you. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Momin, for that very informative presentation and annual parent update and family engagement meeting. Greatly appreciate that. And certainly, as you said, we'll be pushing the PowerPoint out. It'll be translated in Spanish, and all the information's including that PowerPoint. There's plenty of contacts because we're here to support our families and students in the Harrisburg School District. So, and please don't hesitate to utilize any of those contacts Dr. Momin shared if you need anything at your school level or central administratively. So again, thank you, Dr. Momin, for that presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Summer.
Thank you. I too would like to thank you, Dr. Moon, for sharing. And as you articulated, as a school district that receives title funds or federal funds, we are committed to working with parents and guardians to support children and to do it in a very collaborative fashion. And through title programs and activities, there are a wealth of opportunities to engage with parents as we work together to support children. And what you also mentioned is that there's an opportunity for parents to share in the decision-making process at schools, to be a part of the planning process as we work together to support children. And again, parents are encouraged to work right along with us side by side because again, our common goal is to do and to provide the very best for all children in the Harrisburg School District. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Salmon.
Thank you. Mr. Selmer, we are excited about the presentation that you are getting ready to share with us. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Samuels. So this will be the March update for our return to school planning. And so this will be in reference to cohort 1, which we're looking forward to returning our first cohort of students for in-person learning on April 6th. Just as a reminder, last month we updated you on the virtual learning update that was the PDE updated recommendation. This had to do with if those districts that were in counties with a positivity rate above 10% or an incident rate per 100,000 that's above 100. So that was the January 7th update. There has been an additional update since the January 7th update, which is the next slide. So as part of the rollout of the vaccine for educators, there was an update to the PDE recommended learning model. And the most recent update has to do with guidance under moderate spread category. It now notes hybrid learning only when you're in that category as a recommendation. In Dauphin County, we're still under substantial yet, and that's how we're continuing to operate. But once we get to a sustained level of moderate, PDE has modified the recommendation, so that's something we'll review if we get to the point where Dauphin County is in that category. But currently, we are still under substantial spread, which the recommendation is a blended learning option for elementary with a mix of virtual for our upper grades. Next slide, please. So what is our current landscape of returning for in-person learning? Just as a reminder, there's no federal COVID-19 leave. That expired on December 31st, it should be 2020, and is not being renewed. It continues to be a fluid situation. We expect that guidance will continue to update and change, even from this presentation tonight until our next board meeting. We expect things will continue to evolve and change. The vaccine rollout, declining case numbers, and the way COVID-19 can be medically treated are key to cohort 1 moving forward. We are seeing more promising numbers in Dauphin County. So the most recent numbers are a positivity rate of 7.8%, and our incident rate per 100,000 is at 109. So it's closing in on that 100 or below number. So that's very positive. In addition, the BioBot data, which I referred to a number of times over the past couple of months, which is the sampling of the wastewater treatment and wastewater coming out of the city. The most recent projection is about a 5% incident rate, and that's one of the lowest positivity incident rates we've seen since the summer. So things are absolutely trending in the right direction. I just think we need to continue to stay, vigilant as far as, social distancing, masking as people continue to get vaccinated. But we are definitely heading in a much more positive direction. Next slide, please. Survey results. We surveyed staff and families in January and February, and there were some common themes amongst both those survey groups. And those themes were the 4 pieces I listed on this slide. Families and staff were concerned regarding HVAC maintenance when we're talking about a return to in-person learning, vaccine availability, nightly cleaning procedures, and temperature checks and on operating procedures. And I want to discuss each of these individually for the public tonight. Next slide, please. HVAC review. So as a district, we contracted with Element Environmental to complete a 2-part assessment, which include ventilator inspections and air quality parameter assessments in our classrooms. So for those cohorts that are returning April 6th, we contracted with Element Environmental to go through and do an assessment in each and every room regarding the univents, how they were operating, and where issues could possibly be as we get ready for a return. Classroom units were assessed to ensure fan systems were operational, the cleanliness of the units were adequate, filters were changed in the units and their current filters. And we also asked them to ensure that at least one operating window in each classroom did work. They also reviewed exhaust fans where applicable. If airflow and air quality was an identified issue, there are 2 remedies we were looking at to address that. One is open windows and fresh air, and that's actually a CDC recommendation. In buildings where you can open windows, that is an absolute strategy that they recommend when safe that you would do that. The other piece is air filtration or a combination of both. So what we also did as a school district to be proactive is we ordered a large number of air filtration units, purifying units, which are scheduled for delivery this week. So where classrooms are identified needing that additional support, we will have the units placed in those classrooms prior to April 6th when students return. In addition, we're looking at interior spaces such as nurses' office, et cetera, that may not have windows to also add these units. And with our sci-tech building. Our sci-tech building is the only building in the district that does not have windows that open. So we are going to look at putting these units in classrooms at sci-tech. So that was a major issue. And as a district and administration, we wanted to take some action as we were preparing for April 6th. The second item that came up was vaccine for staff. And so last month, the school district worked with the Capital Area Intermediate Unit to secure vaccines for close to 100 of our 1A eligible employees. Those employees actually received their second shot this past Friday. In addition, last week, Governor Wolf announced the J&J vaccine would go to education workers across the state, and that began last week. What does that mean for Harrisburg? 388 Harrisburg employees and contractors will have access to vaccine through the J&J rollout. That vaccine distribution started again last week. It's a 7-day-a-week operation right now through weekends. And again, we're really excited that our employees will have that type of access. Please understand it's district employees, it's bus drivers, our food service team, our secretaries, etc. Anyone that will be involved with buildings that are opening April 6th were prioritized for those 388 vaccines. We anticipate, and this is how fluid the situation is, we received an email at 5 o'clock that second round of J&J vaccine will be available by the end of March. So we just received that from our capital area IU partners. And so for any individual that did not make the 388 shot list, they will be on round 2. So that's exciting news. Again, very fluid situation. The next issue was nightly cleaning. So we've been working closely with Aramark, and they're in the process of hiring additional staff to fill vacancies. We expect by the end of the week, next week, to be at a 90% fill rate capacity, which means an average of what was 16 openings reduces to 4 FTE openings. The school district is also looking at other support options for nighttime cleaning if necessary. Staff will be moved around during the day to ensure cleaning happens during the 90-minute transition window. Dr. Sneath will be discussing the schedule and giving a quick overview of how April 6th will operate. And the 90-minute transition between cohort A and cohort B is a very, very important transition that we need to take care of process and procedures during that transition when it comes to cleaning. We purchased 3 more Clorox 360 machines, which now gives us 11 district-wide. Every building has a Clorox 360 disinfecting machine. And if we need more, we will go out and purchase more. But we believe at this point that will be an adequate number. We do expect an all-hands-on-deck approach to make this successful. Both our AFSCME and our Aramark employees need to work together to support this initiative on a day-to-day basis. And I will be personally meeting with all our head custodians this week to ensure a clear understanding on these expectations. Next slide, please. Temperature checks and the attestation. So there is an attestation checkoff on the registration form that families must agree to in order to return a child for hybrid in-person instruction. One of those key checkoff items is the completion of a self-screener before sending their child to school. The self-screener will be posted on the website. It's going to be shared by the buildings. It's actually attached to the superintendent's resolution tonight to return to school. This is a very important piece for our families. We need your help. It's going to be critical that if your child is having any symptoms, if you are not certain, err on the side of caution and keep them home. Okay, because for us to mitigate risk and have our best chance of having a continuity of in-person education is for all of us to make sure we do our part to make this work. The school district will have temperature kiosks and handheld temperature devices at all buildings. So when you come through the front of the building as a student, you're going to walk through a system that will immediately snap your temperature. And if there's an issue, certainly we'll have nurses and staff to help address that. If any part of the attestation is not adhered to, the concern from the building is going to be sent to the Office of Academics for review and action, and that's Dr. Sneeth's office. And I need to be very upfront. The resolution may be a conversation or a warning, or could be that we would have to make a student go back to all virtual learning. That's not something we want to do, but I need to emphasize how serious of a situation this is when we move to this in-person learning model. Again, we all just have to work together, be communicative, and we'll be fine. But again, this is serious, and that's why the attestation was part of that form. Next slide, please. So the instructional choice form and video of the in-person blended learning schedule has been posted. Dr. Sneeth, and I thank Dr. Sneeth for her great work in putting that video together to give families an idea of what a day will look like for their student in the Harrisburg School District when they return. The form, again, includes that attestation by parents regarding temperature checks, contact information, transportation, and school pickup criteria. One of the challenges we have as a school district is making sure that we have updated contact information from our families. I can share to our families tonight, this is more important than ever, that we have updated cell phone, landline, email, etc. contact information. Please, if you could reach out to your building, if you have any doubt that we don't have accurate contact information for you, please reach out to your buildings. I know it was part of the form, and I would just stress, if something changes between now and April 6th, we need you to provide us that information. The connectivity and the quickness in which we can connect with you will be so important if we do have something that happens with your young learner during the day, as far as a symptom that could be related to COVID. Cohort 1, April 6, 2021. So special education, K-12, those students will return on a modified half-day schedule, and our elementary students, K-1-2, will return for a half-day schedule, 90 minutes between cohorts. Obviously, the final numbers will drive the model, and Dr. Sneeth, again, at the end, will be providing you an update on what the current numbers look like. And it's very interesting how the numbers are trending very, very close to the survey data that we've been doing over the past couple months. Cohort 2, April 19th, 2021. And this is certainly assuming that cohort 1 is successful, that we have a continuity of in-person instruction, that we don't have a lot of starts and stops because of COVID. The plan would be grades of 3 and 4 will return for our standardized testing that we are required to provide via the federal government. In-person options following the testing windows would be discussed, and there'll be more information forthcoming as those discussions continue to unfold. Grades 5 through 11 for the rest of the school year will return for testing only. Testing will be completed from April to June. As a school district, we are required to provide this testing, and we had a lot of discussion regarding when is the right time to offer the testing. And we believe that given how difficult this school year has been, the best thing we can do is try to get this summer in order, which we'll talk about next month, and then start our school year fresh, so to speak. And what we evaluated is simply this. If you look at a traditional school calendar, 180 days, if you look at the end of August, and we're going to start school on August 30th based on the school calendar that is up for approval tonight, the continuity of your schedule, the largest number of days that you have without interruption is from the end of August to your holiday season. Once you hit the holiday season, you leave the holiday season, you have winter weather, you have delays, you have snow, etc. And then you're back in the spring when you have testing again. And we just feel that it's not in the best interest, given some of the learning loss that we're going to try and help support, to test twice next school year. And that's why we're making the decision, and this plan is the plan that we're proposing to move forward as we head into the summer and next school year. And then our seniors will be offered end-of-year activities and supports as they embark on the rest of their school year and head towards graduation. And just to note, elementary is still the first priority as noted in CDC and PDE recommendations. Next slide, please. So other questions we've received. The recommendations are going to follow current PDE guidance. The model that we're incorporating will require 6 feet of social distancing whenever possible. And we're setting up classrooms for 6 feet of social distancing, and which will limit our capacity. But whenever possible, we have to stay 6 feet. Busing will be limited to 1 student per seat unless they're riding with a sibling. If they're with a sibling, then they could be paired up in the same seat. Again, parents must do self-screening before the bus arrives. A self-screening sheet, again, will be posted in English and Spanish. Food service is going to remain under grab and go. So on a Tuesday, we have our grab and go service. That will remain through the rest of the school year. Children who are going to be coming for half-day in-person learning will receive snacks both at the AM cohort and the PM cohort. So there will be a snack provided during the morning and the afternoon, but the 5-day grab and go program is going to continue as is through the rest of the school year. And then we're also going to be looking at the possible continuation of it through the summer again this year. Again, more information next month on that piece. Our protective equipment, our PPE, is ready and available as it's been since the fall. Our staff have to complete a self-screener via the app. So not only are we asking our families to make sure they do the self-screener with their child, the same requirement is in place for our staff. And in addition, our staff will also then use the temperature screeners when they enter our buildings. Student desks will have shields on them. Next slide, please. Our specials will be taught virtually, which Dr. Sneath will touch on in a few minutes. Staffing allocations and student assignments will be finalized once the student numbers are in. So today was the last day to sign up for the in-person learning model for K-1-2 and our special education students. Staffing allotments are a key part of all modeling. And so when we talk about grades 3 and 4, et cetera, there's a staffing component to that plays into our ability on what we can offer and maybe what we still have to do virtually. There's a social emotional health plan being finalized by the pupil services team, which outlines supports for students as they return. We understand as a school district that a child isn't just going to come back into the classroom in the same manner they did when we left a year ago. And as a school district, we recognize that, and we want to be able to support that transition as we bring those young learners back to us. If students need to move through a building, they'll need to do so in a manner where social distancing is adhered to, and that will be led by their teacher and building principal. Our service provider for subs, Kelly, is increasing sub coverage for our elementary buildings. Bathroom protocols will be finalized at the building level. And we have not banned any specific items in the rooms, but please only send your student with absolute learning necessities. We want our students to be at their desk, following social distancing guidelines and protocols at all times. Next slide, please. Arrivals and dismissals may look similar based on the building. Obviously, each of our buildings has different logistics, different setup, but we anticipate that they will look similar as they arrive. Now, how they enter the building will be different because of going through the temperature scanning equipment. Once the health and safety plan is approved, which is on the agenda tonight for Dr. Samuel's consideration, final individual building protocols will be shared as we move through the next couple weeks. Our water fountains in those buildings are being converted to bottle filling water systems. So we've already done, I believe, 1 or 2 at Foos. The other units are going to be in, I believe it's this week. And then Mr. Glass has an installation company ready to go for those units. Staff and students must wear a mask. A face shield alone is not acceptable. Wearing both together is fine, but you cannot have a face shield but not have a mask. Okay, so masks are required. Face shield and mask together is fine. Other concerns such as busing, eating, cleaning are touched on as part of the health and safety plan, which again is attached to the agenda this evening. It's a very comprehensive document. And again, I encourage you to look at that document that is attached on board docs. Very important point here, and we've been asked this a lot. Uniforms will not be required through the end of the school year, but dress guidance will be found in your return to school information. So Dr. Sneath and the team have worked very hard to look at this issue, And our families, we've heard you. You've raised your concerns regarding this, especially given the last year. And we agree. We want your young learner with us. There will be dress guidance that, we need to be, cognizant of. But again, uniforms will not be required through the end of this school year. So just for this 45-day window. If a classroom or building must close because of COVID, a message will be sent. The district will also post a message on its website, its district social media page, as well as your school's social media pages will have that information. And it could come to a point, depending on what the situation is, that we may not necessarily have to shut a whole building down. We may have to shut a classroom down, depending on the situation. And that's why reducing the amount of movement and keeping our children for that 2.5 hours within their classroom as much as possible is very important if we do have a case of COVID and we have to do contact tracing. So again, this is going to be an absolute team effort like we probably never seen before amongst the school district and our family and the community to make this successful. A quick athletics update. So spring sports will start on time. The tentative plan is when baseball, softball, and track players are on the field competing, they will not be required to wear a mask because in baseball and softball, obviously there's plenty of social distance and they're outside. And in track, we're concerned, especially for those longer events, that wearing a mask could be problematic for our track and field athletes. Now, when our players are on the bench, they're on the sideline, masks absolutely will be required. Parents will be allowed to attend these events on a limited basis. The bleachers will have a limited capacity based on social distancing, and we're asking that you wear your mask when in attendance. Coaches must wear masks at all times. It is still required for our coaches to wear masks. And again, this will be monitored closely and will be adjusted as needed. Well, why would it be adjusted? Well, if we start to see COVID numbers start to escalate, if there's new guidance that comes out regarding this, we make, AD Everett may make adjustments, but this is what we're going to start with for spring sports. And again, AD Everett will continue to push out information to those families of the athletes within the next 1 to 2 weeks. So what are our next steps? The instructional choice form will be posted through today. It was, I believe it came down at 4 o'clock. We are asking the families to complete one form for each child, which they've done a great job of. So thank you to our families. If a parent did not complete a form, they're going to be in virtual learning, their child, for the remainder of this school year. Our temperature kiosks are being set up and more handheld devices for temperature checks will be provided as needed. We're going to continue to finalize the preparation of our buildings with cleaning and filter changing. There's some final filter changing updates that need to be done with some of the equipment yet. That'll be ready to go. Continue our acceleration of our HVAC software controls to the new platform. There's actually the next phase is on our board agenda for consideration and approval tonight. Our staff will be returning to our buildings on Monday, March 22nd. If you recall, all our staff were in our buildings to start the school year. Middle of November, COVID started to spike. We reduced numbers because we were seeing problems internally with our staff contracting COVID. And we've been in that mode since the middle of November. We're now moving back to having our staff back in the buildings Monday, March 22nd. Cohort 1 is April 6th. Again, students must come to school with a mask on. Now, if something happens, they forget something, a mask rips, etc., we have plenty of backup masks. And if any of our students, our families, if you need support in this area, please reach out to your building principal and your building team. We want to make sure that there's no issues with the availability of masks for our students. Again, building capacity will be at least 50% or less of its pre-COVID-19 numbers. We're going to continue to meet and update the pandemic committee. We have a committee which you'll see is listed in the health and safety plan. I believe there's about 16 members on that committee, and they've been working and been being provided updates as we've been modifying and updating the health and safety plan. We'll continue to monitor PPE supplies. Again, health and safety plans on the agenda tonight. Information on cohort 2 will be released in the coming weeks, which will discuss testing and other schedule adjustments. If you have any questions related to the health and safety plan, our return, COVID-19, we have an email box that we've used actually for about a year now. It's covid19@hbgsd.us. That box is monitored each and every day. So if you have a question, a concern, you need more information, that is a great way. You can also call the office to Miss Anderson, and we can certainly help answer those questions. We will continue to monitor the data. It's fluid, and it's a fluid situation. And obviously, we're watching closely what's happening overseas right now in Europe and Italy, because if you look at what happened last year, it started there and then it migrated to the United States. And so we're going to keep an eye on, obviously, on what's happening overseas and right around us here in the Northeast. And last, but certainly not least, before I turn it over to Dr. Sneath, again, thank you for your continued support. This community has been through a lot. Looking at, we're a year since COVID-19 started, and it's impacted Harrisburg in so many ways. And there's been so much loss, quite frankly, over the past year. And I just want you to know, as you know, Dr. Samuels, our receiver in the administration, we recognize that. And, you know, when we're making these decisions, we want you to know that's always been part of this decision-making process. And it's been so difficult as we make these decisions. But at the end of the day, I hope you feel and understand that we followed the data from day one, and we tried to make the absolute best balanced decisions we could make with the data that was available to us. And it's data that changes all the time. But I think we've done our best to continue to monitor and try to let that information guide our decision-making process. But we are excited for April 6th. It really is the turning of the corner. And hopefully this will springboard us into so many great things as we hopefully return in the near future to some sense of normalcy. And we have our kids back with us 5 days a week, you know, in front of our teachers. And we can utilize this past year. We learned a lot of lessons, a lot of valuable lessons that will be part of our instructional offerings moving forward. But nothing beats having our kids with us in our buildings 5 days a week. So again, this is our first step towards achieving that ultimate goal of normalcy as we move forward. So I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Sneath, Dr. Sneath, if you could just add any information that our families should know regarding the model. And again, Dr. Sneath, I want to thank you and your team. You have worked so hard over the past couple months and this year getting us ready for April 6th and that this day would come. So again, thank you, Dr. Sneath. The floor is yours.
Thanks so much, everyone. Welcome this evening. I'm not going to add too much detail. Mr. Silmer really gave a comprehensive update, but I will reiterate a few things. Today was the last day that families of kindergarten, first and second grade students could make the decision to register their child for in-person instruction beginning on April 6th. Of the 1,610 first, second, and third graders that are enrolled in our school district, 787 of them have registered for in-person instruction. Back a couple months ago and throughout this entire year, we've been putting out surveys, and we've been so hopeful that the trends of the surveys are the reality of what's best for Harrisburg. And thankfully, the survey that was put out most recently about how parents felt about sending their children back to school pretty much told us that about 50% of our families felt prepared to send their children back to school, and about 50% of our families preferred to keep their children in at-home instruction for the rest of the school year. So of 1,610, 787 are coming back, and that is 48.88% of our students. So it's almost exactly what the survey told us. We used that data to create the plan itself. So I'm very excited to be able to report that the plan will work. There will need to be some transition. It's not always going to be seamless, but I think that we're very well prepared to engage our learners in person, but we're also very prepared to continue to engage your learners if they're staying remote for the rest of the school year. In the next few days, you will get a letter from your school informing you of whether your child is in Group A or Group B. Group A students will come to school in the morning from 8:50 to 11:20. There will be a 2-hour break in between, and Group B students will arrive at school at 1:20 and be dismissed at 3:50. There will be directions for what parents need to do and how your child should be prepared. A transportation letter will soon follow. If your child already or always received transportation to his or her school, you will receive transportation now with the social distancing guidelines that Mr. Selmer articulated earlier. The transportation information will come out in a different letter. As Mr. Selmer said, and I don't think we can reiterate this enough, we put a very specific part of the registration form in place because we really need to ensure our families that we are doing everything possible to make the environment as safe as possible. Parents needed to agree if they are planning to send their child back to school that they support the mask wearing policy, that they agree to provide a health screener for their child, and if their child exhibits symptoms consistent with COVID, that they will keep their child home that day for remote learning for the day. Parents agree that if your child comes to school and you receive a phone call from the school that your child is exhibiting symptoms, someone, either you or one of the people on your emergency list, will come to the school within 20 to 30 minutes to pick their child up and bring them home. We asked that parents are on time for pickup at the end of the learning session every day. That is really an important piece. It's not a time where we can talk. We can't have large gatherings. We want to hand off your child safely to you so that your child can go home and either they're done for the day if they're afternoon students, or they will go online for the afternoon if they're morning students. So the way it works is that if a child, while a child is at school, it doesn't matter which group, if they come to school in the morning, they will have literacy instruction and mathematics instruction during in-person learning. They will leave at 11:20, and then they will log back into their computer at 1:20 in the afternoon. They will have their class meeting at that time. They will have their special in the afternoon. This will all be virtual. They will have their intervention time in the afternoon virtually, and they will have their content time, which we call social studies and science instruction, virtually in the afternoon. In the morning, in addition to ELA and mathematics instruction, of course, we are going to work really hard on explicitly teaching the social behavior that your child needs to be reminded of or needs to be taught if they're a first-time school attender. Best possible learning behaviors that we want to see. We will be explicitly teaching them, practicing them, and reinforcing our children for showing us those behaviors. One of the big caveats is that your child's Chromebook is now a very important piece of learning. We would really like for our in-person families to make sure that you're charging your child's Chromebook at home overnight, every night, and placing the Chromebook in your child's backpack for use at school. That is very important to get in the habit of doing this so that your child has every tool necessary to be successful. While the first week that your child is in school, we will put a protective cover on the Chromebooks so that you'll see that it'll be very difficult for damage to occur. We still encourage you to take as good of care of our Chromebooks as you have been, but the protective cover will also give that extra layer of protection. And all in all I can do is repeat. We are thrilled to be able to have children back in the schools. We are very vigilant about making sure that we create an environment that feels safe because we've put all the procedures in place to keep all of the school community, teachers, support staff, bus drivers, everyone safe throughout this time. So thank you so much for the support you provided, for the feedback that you provided. Your feedback has made it absolutely, it's been essential in all of our planning. There will be more to come for our 3rd through 8th grade students who will be expected to come into school to do their PSSAs. Our high school students will also be expected to come into school to take their Keystones. More to come on that information. We will be using very similar guidelines to keep our test takers safe as we are with our K1 and 2 children. So thank you so much. Any questions, be in touch with your child's school office. If there's something that the building can't answer, I am certain that they will get in touch with me so we can find a solution. So have a great night and thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sneath. And I just want to mention as well that through the past 3 months, we've been doing testing with our L students. So there are many procedures that have been well vetted, reviewed, and implemented. And so we can take those procedures, and we have, and I give a lot of credit to Miss Kathy Alston and her team for really putting together extremely solid processes and procedures that we'll be able to really pick up and utilize for our spring testing window. And if you remember, when we did that testing, the COVID situation was starting to decrease, but it's not at the level where it's at today. Which is it's a much lower level. So we believe that we'll be able to do this with success. And the other piece I just want to mention when we talk about safety, we're really in COVID terms, we're talking about reducing risk, and we're trying to mitigate the amount of risk that we have to keep our buildings open. And Dr. Sneath mentioned that transition and that handoff to and from school will be critical. If you need to meet with your teacher and meet with someone in the building, we're going to do that through Zoom yet. We're going to continue those processes and procedures. We want to only have the minimum number of necessary adults and children in each building. That's how we do this successfully and we mitigate risk. So I just wanted to make sure I shared with you as our families, and it is outlined in the health and safety plan, which we'll talk about in a minute. The other piece I wanted to mention too is registration as we transition. Kindergarten registration is open. We're registering students since last week. And so again, we look forward to continuing that registration process. There's a team which Dr. Samuels has been leading that's been working very hard on our registration processes and procedures. We have a true online registration process now for our families. So we're continuing to focus and trying to enhance the experience for our families to make this as seamless and as easy as possible. And the last piece I want to mention is the parent tab on our website. On the parent tab on our website, there's a lot of information regarding registration for kindergarten. I think Mr. Nornholt's going to bring it up right now. So there's registration, there's COVID-19 information, there's PDE opportunity information, there's student address change information. So lots of information for you, our parents, that can be found right on our newly designed, updated website. So again, that is here for you to use, and there's resources both in English and Spanish on our website. So again, great resource and great tool for our families to use. Dr. Samuels, any comments before we transition to the business part of the meeting this evening?
Well, I'd like to take a moment to thank you, Mr. Selmer and Dr. Sneath, for the update. And we know that this is a lot for parents, and we know that there will be questions, and we look forward to, working together with our parents and families and children so that this is a smooth transition, as we reopen schools. So there's a lot of information we know that's coming, at once, and we look forward to, working in a collaborative way, exercising great customer service so that we can support and work in a real collaborative way with you. And as both Dr. Sneath and Mr. Selmer said, we cannot wait. We are so anxious to have children return to buildings. And there will be a lot of activities underway over these next few months. And we look forward to, working in sync so that, we hold our children up and we keep them in the center, and that we work together as partners, as a team, to be as supportive as we possibly can. So this is a great time, although it's very, very busy as well. But we want to collaborate, and we know that we want to keep the lines of communication open and the information flowing. So we look forward to that. So I, again, thank you all for sharing. We know that there's lots more, information this evening. And on that note, Mr. Summer, we're open for recommendations. Yes.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Samuels.
Thank
Under
you.
the Office of Superintendent, I have two recommendations for you this evening. Two very important recommendations. The first one is to request your approval for the revised health and safety plan as attached. The approved plan and attestation form will allow the administration to begin a transition from full virtual instruction to blended instruction, testing, and other instructional campus activities. The first cohort of blended learning begins on April 6, 2021. Other in-person cohorts and activities will be announced at a later date. The following approval also grants the superintendent permission to update the November 2020 Pennsylvania Department of Education attestation form to reflect the upcoming change in instructional mode. The revised documents will be posted on the website.
Terrific, and thank you for that. It is a pleasure to approve the amended health and safety plan and the updated Pennsylvania Department of Education attestation, as you have so eloquently presented. Very comprehensive, but it certainly does, it's consistent with the mandates and the expectations as designated by the Pennsylvania Department of Education. The recommendation is approved. Thank you.
Thank you. And my other recommendation is a Dauphin County ramp project at DA Marshall School. And this is to request your approval for a polling place lease agreement between the school district and the county of Dauphin involving a portion of the DA Marshall School Building, 301 Hales Avenue, Harrisburg, PA. This is subject to final approval of the school district solicitor and school district administration. And what this would allow is the Dauphin County is doing various ADA compliance upgrades across the city at polling sites. And DA Marshall was one of the selected sites of the school district, which would upgrade accessibility aside of the gym area at DA Marshall. So again, we think this makes a lot of sense. It's a win-win in the administration's opinion, and that's why we're recommending it this evening.
Great. Thank you for the recommendation. And this is consistent with the partnership that the school district has had with the county of Dauphin County, as we have, worked to use many of our buildings as polling sites. So the recommendation to modify the ramp at the DA Marshall School to support polling is approved.
Thank you, Dr. Samuels. And before transitioning to Ms. Lillis, I do want to make one other public mention of an item that's probably people have started to see regarding stimulus funding for school districts, including the Harrisburg School District. So I just want to make just a broad overview that we will be providing additional information at the April meeting regarding these, what they're called ESSER funds. There are three buckets of funding: ESSER 1, ESSER 2, ESSER 3. And we've been spending down some of the ESSER 1 dollars. That was the first stimulus package, but there have now been two other packages approved with significant dollars attached to them. The school district is still doing its due diligence, looking through the process, procedure, and requirements for those dollars. So I did not want to ignore the fact that it appears there's going to be significant funding available for the school district. This is one-time, I stress one-time funding to be spent over the next several years. And again, we'll have more information as an administration, definitely in April and moving forward. So I just wanted to make mention of that. I'd now like to turn it over to Ms. Lillis for Office of Human Resources. Ms. Lillis.
Thank you very much. This evening, we have two retirements for Dr. Samuels' approval.
Thank you, Mrs. Ellis. The recommendation for the two employees as reflected, the recommendation for the retirements, they are accepted. And with the acceptance, we wish to thank both the employees for their many years of service, together over 50 years, 53 years of service to the Harrisburg School District. The recommendation is approved.
Thank you. Under item B, we have some resignations and end of service. There are 6 listed.
The recommendation for the resignations and/or end of service for the 6 employees as reflected is approved. And once again, we'd like to thank these employees for the time that they have spent serving and working in the Harrisburg School District.
Thank you. Under item C, we have 5 new employees listed.
It is a pleasure to welcome the 5 new employees to the Harrisburg School District. And as Mrs. Lillis always so eloquently mentioned, we're looking forward to the time to bring everyone together to celebrate. But in the interim, it is a pleasure to welcome these new employees to the Harrisburg School District, and we look forward to working in collaboration and as partners as we work together to serve our children and families. Thank you.
Thank you. Under item D, we have 2 administrative appointments. Number 1 is an interim assistant principal, Amy Grab, at Marshall Math Science Academy, and Darnell Montgomery, who is assuming an assistant principal position at the Roland Academy, both earlier this month.
Terrific. We are delighted to have Ms. Grab and Mr. Montgomery serve in these capacities, and we look forward to working with them. The recommendation for the change in status is approved.
Thank you. Item E is column changes due to credits earned, and we have 5 staff members listed there.
The recommendation for the changes in status due to credits earned for the 5 employees reflected is approved.
Thank you. Under item F, the supplemental stipend section, there are 9 items listed under this section.
The recommendation for the supplementals and/or stipends for the 9 employees reflected is approved.
Thank you. Item G finishes out our winter athletics, paying our coaches for their successful seasons ending on the dates noted.
The recommendation for winter athletics for the positions and for the employees as reflected is approved.
And similarly, spring athletics began last week. Baseball, softball, and track, prorating those rates at the present time as listed under item H.
The recommendation for spring athletics for the supplemental salaries for baseball, softball, and track, the recommendation is approved.
Under item I, family medical leave of absence are listed for your information.
Yes, thank you. And we note that the family medical leave, as you mentioned, Mrs. Hills, is for informational purposes only, but we wish to be very transparent to show the request for family medical leave for the 14 employees as reflected.
Thank you. Item J are 5 individuals listed for an unpaid leave of absence.
The recommendation for the unpaid leave of absence for the 5 employees as reflected is approved.
Thank you. And then letter K lists general HR items, and there are 3 listed there.
The recommendation for the 3 human resources items are approved as reflected.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Lillis.
Thank you, Ms. Lois. And again, I want to publicly thank you for your work on the vaccination program with the state and how quickly everything had to be turned around. So again, really appreciate your work also in that area. So
Yeah.
thank you.
And I join Mr. Selmer in thanking you very much, Mrs. Sillis. You're very meticulous, attention to detail, and you're involved in quite a bit, and we appreciate that. So thank you so much.
Okay, we'll move on to Office of Business Services. Mr. Longridge.
Good evening, everyone. Dr.
Good evening.
Samuels, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Longridge.
The first item I have this evening is the Treasurer's Report. And, I'm requesting your approval for the report period ending February 28th, 2021, in the amount of $40,319,050.25.
Thank you. And we're noting that the Treasurer's Report, as Mr. Longridge just mentioned, is reflected on the screen. The recommendation for the Treasurer's Report ending the time period that includes February 28th, 2021 is approved in the amount presented. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item I have tonight, we have several budget transfers in the amount of $5,972,140. We're requesting your approval of those tonight.
The recommendation for the budget transfers for the 2021 school year in the amount reflected is approved.
Thank you, Dr. Samuels.
Thank you.
Under item D, ratification of accounts payable checks, we have 4 line items. We have February 26th, 2021, March 5th, 2021. We have a March 5th dating of wire transfers from February, and a March 12th check run, and the amounts are all listed there. We're requesting your ratification of those this evening, Dr. Samuels.
Great, thank you. The ratification for the accounts payable checks for the dates February 26, 2021, March 5th, 2021, and March 12th, 2021 is approved. In addition to the March 5th ACH wire transfer that took place in February. They are approved in the amount reflected.
Thank you, Dr. Samuels.
Thank you.
Item E is ratification of our payroll processing. We had 2 payroll runs since our last board meeting, one on February 19th, the amount of $1,133,666.88, and then one on March 5th, $1,122,722.88. We're requesting ratification of those 2 payroll runs, Dr. Samuels.
The recommendation for the ratification of payroll processing for the dates that include February 19th, 2021 and March 5th, 2021 are approved in the amounts reflected on the screen. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item F, Dr. Samuels, this is an annual approval, the approval of the capital area intermediate unit budget. So this evening, the intermediate unit has presented the 2021-2022 general operating budget to each school board in the intermediate unit. And so tonight I'm presenting to you for your approval the capital area intermediate unit general operating budget in the amount of $7,710,126. The documentation presented indicates that there is a 4.95% increase in that budget. However, the good news is thanks to their internal efficiencies and their understanding of what is going on with COVID and some of the pressures on the member districts, they have not passed those costs on to the member school districts. There is no increase to Harrisburg for the upcoming school year. Just to give some context to this, Dr. Samuels, it's about a $40,000 contribution that our school district makes for this general operating budget for the IU, this budget that's presented tonight. We, of course, pay more costs for contracted services for special education and things like that. But for this specific budget, the general operating budget, it's about $40,000. We'll expect to pay the same amount in next year's, and that's reflected on page 21 of the document that's there, if anyone in the public or any of the board members wish to look at that. So we've reviewed this and we're recommending your approval of this document tonight. We'll pass on the appropriate signatures and paperwork to the IU board so that they can then in turn adopt this and follow their timelines for PDE. Great.
Thank you very much, Mr. Longridge, for sharing, and thank you for the comprehensive explanation. The recommendation for the approval of the capital area intermediate unit budget in the amount reflected is approved. And one of the things that you also articulated is the fact that we know that we have partnerships with MCIU, but our relationship and our partnership with the capital area intermediate unit is one of the most significant partnerships that we have. Our contracts and other services, it's well over $2 million that we do share and contract in terms of various services with the capital area intermediate unit. And as you mentioned, this is their general operating budget. And we do contribute, as do other school districts in Dauphin County, to this particular budget. So thank you for that explanation. And we do encourage, folks to look at board docs so that they can see the comprehensive amount, as you mentioned. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Dr. Samuels. Item G this evening, this is a request for you to ratify an agreement with Keystone Collections Group. We requested that Keystone assist us in complying with the Act 80 tax reporting requirement. There was a work order that they presented to us in the amount of $750. They have already processed this and started the work, and so we're well on our way to meeting all of these deadlines with the state. But in order to be fully transparent, we're presenting this work order to you and requesting your ratification of it. And as I said, it's a $750. It's money well spent, would save an enormous amount of person hours in processing and tracking this. Their capabilities are invaluable in assisting us with completing this data processing.
Great, thank you. The recommendation for the ratification for the agreement with Keystone Collections Group in an amount not to exceed $750 is approved.
Thank you. Item H, we were very fortunate. Mr. Bainey from Spirit Moving Company has once again offered to donate boxes of food for our families in the district. And again, each box is valued between $50 and $80. We're still partnering with them and working out the dates to be delivered, but we expect it to be here in March, a few of these weekends where we'll deliver this food. So we're requesting your approval of this very generous donation from Mr. Bainey and his company, Spirit Moving Company.
So first and foremost, I join you and our team, Mr. Selmer, in thanking Mr. Bainey and the Spirit Moving Company for their generosity. The recommendation to approve the donation from Spirit Moving Company to support our families through the donation of 300 boxes of food is approved and appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then finally, Dr. Samuels, last item I have this evening is, and this is a critical component of what you heard Mr. Selmer, Dr. Sneak talk about, our bringing our students back and getting back to normalcy with our education program. We have worked with our transportation partners to extend our current agreement, and this is pending your approval, of course, extend the pricing for 2 years. or extend the pricing for 1 year. It's a 2% increase for the 2021-2022 school year. We worked with them with language that's already in the existing agreements. There's a provision in there that allows us to negotiate these increases. And for both of our main providers, Boyo Transportation and Craft, they're the main bus company that we have. We negotiated with them a 2% increase, and this fits with the recovery plan and the models and the projections that we've worked with PFM on. So this fits in with their forecasts as well. So tonight we're requesting your approval of an extension of 1 year at a 2% increase on all of the pricing at the different vehicles and different types of services that they provide. I've provided for everyone's review copies of our existing contracts, as well as a very simple spreadsheet that shows what our current pricing is versus the increase of a 2%, just so everyone has a chance to see what that increase would be.
Great, thank you. The recommendation to extend the transportation contracts for an additional year for the 2021-2022 school year with both Craft and Boyo is approved with the understanding that the contract will reflect an increase up to 2% for that time period. Thank you for sharing. Thank you, Mr. Longridge.
Thank you, Dr. Samuels.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Longridge, for those updates, and thank you for your work on that transportation piece. Appreciate that. Office of Academics, Dr. Sneath.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Dr. Samuels. I just have a few approvals. The first approval under A is an affiliation agreement with Point Park University to work with them with student teaching and practicums effective March 11th through the end of the school year.
That's great. So that's just starting. The recommendation for the ratification, the agreement with Point Park University from Pittsburgh is approved as they work with our students through student teaching and practicum experiences for the upcoming school year. That is approved.
Thank you. Under B,
for the current school year, forgive me.
It's for the current, it's for one of our teachers
Yeah.
to complete their practicum experience. So hopefully we will also attract new students as well. Under B, personnel contract, we're really excited to partner with Indiana University of Pennsylvania, IUP, to employ one school psychologist intern for the 21-22 school year in the amount of $15,000. This follows last month where we are partnering with Millersville University for 2 other school psychologist interns for the next school year, which will help us with our voids. We have vacancies in the areas of school psychology, and this is a way that we are trying to entice people to come to Harrisburg and stay with Harrisburg after they finish their degrees.
That'd be great. The recommendation to approve an internship, a psychology internship with Indiana University of Pennsylvania is approved for the 2021-22 school year in the amount of $15,000. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm requesting under C, conference approvals. We have 3 of our educators attending the 2021 PA Migrant Education Conference on March 16th. 2 of them are attending just 1 day of the conference, and Dr. Hemphill is attending for 3 days of that same conference, the PA Migrant Education Conference on March 16th through 18th. This is a virtual conference and it is at no cost to the school district.
Great. The recommendation for the for the conference approvals for the attendees is approved as presented.
Thank you. There are two of our educators that we are also sending or hoping to send to the 2021 English Language Development Virtual Professional Learning Summit on April 14th and April 15th. This is also at no cost to the district.
Great. The request for the employee to attend the conference as presented on March 30th, 2021 at no cost to the district is approved as presented.
Okay, that one. Okay, this one is for our gifted ed teacher to attend the Engineering by Design virtual conference on March 30th, hosted by Intermediate Unit 13 at no cost to the district.
Yes. The recommendation for your request for the individual to attend the professional learning conference as presented is approved.
Thank you. And under D, our last one, I am requesting approval for the Harrisburg School District 21-22 district calendar, which is attached.
Dr. Sneath, would you mind just, before this is approved, would you just highlight or give
Sure.
the highlights from the calendar?
Sure. For those of you who have seen Harrisburg School District calendars in the past, this might look much different to you. Our goal was to simplify it, to simply simplify it and make it more clear. We plan to bring our inductees in the week of August 16th. We will bring our teachers back for 3 days, the week of August 23rd, and our first day of school for students is planned for August 30th. What you're going to see in orange there is that we are really trying to spread out professional development opportunities so that they're not all front loaded at the beginning of the year, but you see a smattering of them as you move through the school year. So there are 3 in August to get set for the school year, 1 in October, 1 in November, 1 in March, and 1 in May. And all of those dates, those plans will be created for the 21-22 school year based on feedback from the Professional Development Steering Committee, which has met and will meet again in June. So that's the best I can say. And then as you scroll down, if you're more of a sort of a list kind of person, this just reiterates what the visual calendar states: the dates that teachers are returning, the dates that students are returning, the holidays where there is no school is identified, and you just sort of read down and kind of counts out the number of school days per month for children and the number of school days per month for our teachers.
And the first, what's proposed right now, the first school day for children is?
August 30th. And the last day of school is identified as June 8th. If you remember a few months ago, flexible instructional days were approved for Harrisburg School District for 3 years. Of course, in the remote setting, we didn't have to actually use them for our first year, but we intend to use them for the next 2 years, which means that our children can learn remotely if the school district needs to close because of inclement weather. So we won't have to take special days throughout the year away from students for snow. We can continue with our remote instruction instead of having to take snow days. So you'll see that there are no snow makeup days in the schedule, except if we exceed our 5-day allotment through FID, then we would add those makeup days to the end of the school year on June 9th and June 10th, depending on how many we need.
Great. Thank you for that overview. It is a pleasure to approve the proposed calendar for the 2021-2022 school year. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sneath. And thanks for your work on that calendar. I think it's a lot more, it's easily readable than prior years. So thank you for putting that together. Let's move to the Office of Operations. Mr. Glass.
Thank you, Mr. Selmer. Good evening, Dr. Samuels. I have a few items for your consideration this evening.
Thank you.
Under technology, item 1, I recommend the approval of a contract with Strategic Link Consulting for a prepaid support block for 28 hours of high-level support for Active Directory, Office 365, Exchange, System Center, SharePoint, Microsoft Identity Manager, SQL Server, and Windows servers. The funding source will be the general fund, and the total cost will be $4,760.
Great. Thank you. The technology recommendation that you shared, Mr. Glass, to contract with Strategic Link Consulting for a block of 28 hours to provide various supports, as you mentioned, is approved in the amount of $4,760. Thank you.
Thank you. Under facilities, item number 1, I recommend ratification of a professional services agreement with Element Environmental for indoor air quality testing as part of the Cohort 1 return to the school plan. The cost is $8,480. The funding source is CARES funding. And I just want to add that Mr. Selmer covered this in his report. And I can tell you, I worked with these individuals hand in hand, and they did very rigorous testing. So I'm excited. The data coming back will be critical for a safe return to school.
Great. And we know, as Mr. Selmer articulated, and just as you have stated, this is critical to the commitment that the district is making to return children and staff to our buildings safely. So the recommendation to ratify the agreement with Element Environmental for indoor air quality testing is approved as presented in the amount of $8,480.
Thank you. And item number 2, I recommend ratification of an agreement with Train US Incorporated. This contract includes upgrade, installation, and integration from our current Niagara Jace controllers at Ben Franklin, Downey, Foose, Hamilton, and Melrose to the new N4 controllers. This purchase is through the Omnia Cooperative Purchasing Contract and meets all procurement guidelines. Total cost is $197,346. Funding source is the general fund. And I'd just like to add that you may have seen over the last several months, we have gradually been making these upgrades to various buildings throughout the district, 3 to be exact. And this move here is going to take us to 8 buildings, and it's going to be very critical moving forward to being able to control our buildings, the airflow, the HVAC. So I'm super excited about this, and this is a very, very huge step for the district.
Great, thank you. The facilities recommendation, the ratification that you mentioned for the agreement with Train USA Incorporated for the controllers in the amount of $197,346 is approved as presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Samuels.
Thank you, Mr. Glass.
Thank you, Mr. Glass, and thank you for all your work in getting us ready for April 6th on the operations side of the house. Really appreciate it. And Dr. Samuels, I just want to make a quick comment regarding the funding source for 2. It's currently listed as general fund, but the administration is researching whether that particular contract would be allowable under UGG for the ESSER dollars. So there could be a change in funding source, ratification, or a new recommendation in the coming months, depending on what legal guidance we get in that regard. So I just wanted to make that note. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for articulating that. Yes, that's a wise move.
Okay, that's all the recommendations for this evening. We'll move to policy, and that will be Ms. Lillis and I believe Dr. Sneed.
Actually, I will defer to Dr. Sneed on this.
Hi, sorry about that. So we are recommending approval of our new attendance policy that is now commensurate with the law. I'm thrilled to be able to have this draft in place. Some of the highlights of the changes between the old policy and the new policy outline changes, for example, of compulsory age of students is now 6 years old to 18 years old, from the age of 8 years old to 17 years old in the previous policy. Additionally, we have defined what habitually truant means. That means 6 or more days of unexcused absences during a school year. Truant shall mean having incurred 3 or more days of unexcused absences for the school year. Out of school suspensions may not be considered as unexcused absences moving forward. A school attendance improvement conference must be held before further legal action to address unexcused absences occurs, and if the student has incurred 6 or more days of unexcused absences. And lastly, the district shall not use truant behavior as a reason for out of school suspension or reassignment to an alternative education program. This is a very long policy. There's many more aspects of the policy. What we plan to do, because attendance is such an important issue in the school district, is to operationalize this for families, make a pamphlet so parents are exactly informed of the expectations for attendance and the natural logical consequences if our children are not of compulsory age are not coming to school on a regular basis. So we hope to make this a lot more understandable to our school community so that we can have students in school as much as possible.
And thank you for sharing that. And the attendance is very important and very consistent with the initiatives in the amended recovery plan. Attendance drives so many things, and this particular policy is really quite comprehensive, and it does include so many very important features. And it is very important that we work together with our students, our families, and our staff members so that we do enhance student attendance and reinforce on a consistent and daily basis just how important student attendance is. And on that note, it is a pleasure and it's very important to approve the updates, the amendments, and the changes in policy 204. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Samuels.
Thank
you, Dr. Sneed. Okay, section 7 is our committee updates, and we have board committee update reports. The first one listed is capital area IU update. That would be Mr. Carter. I don't know if Mr. Carter is on the meeting this evening. If not, we'll just move to the Dauphin County Technical School Joint Operating Committee. That's Ms. Buckwalk and Mr. Pittman.
Thank you, Mr. Selmer, and thank you, Dr. Samuels and the team, and special thanks to the public that's here tonight. It was a busy meeting. It was sad. The meeting was held on March 10th in the evening, our executive session, and we were saddened to learn that our executive president of our Joint Operating Committee board tragically and suddenly passed away. So it was a different tone at the meeting, but we and his 20 years of service to Dauphin County Hvac was noted. Of concerns or of discussion at the meeting was the applications to attend Dauphin County Tech. Most of those, all of them, I guess, are submitted at the middle schools, the middle school ages of 7th and 8th grade, preparing, or 8th grade more likely preparing for the academic year. And what is notable is that to date, we've had 66 less applicants than previous years, and Harrisburg is noted as significantly less. And I know that the executive director, Dr. Flew, has had conversation with Mr. Selmers, and this is probably a direct result of disruption of COVID. So those application dates will be extended, which I'm happy to say. and we'll find out and get a healthy representation of Harrisburg into Dauphin County VOTEC. Not unexpectedly, we are seeing, and we received, members of the Joint Operating Committee, a handout of not by name failing students, but students who are failing by school district. And what we see, it's higher than normally. It's about, Harrisburg has about 86, but Dauphin County VOTEC staff, the executive staff and the teaching staff will be working with all students to hopefully close out the year where they're in a passing grade. It is mostly the academics. And again, that is a direct result of interruption, COVID interruption, and virtual training, so virtual academics. So, I believe that we'll work on both of those things and work out of them. Additionally, students that are in the programs at Dauphin County Tech, in addition to taking required state tests, also must take tests called NOCTI. And what it is a certification of competency and testing and where you are based on your field or course of study. So Dauphin County VOTEC was able to get a waiver for a couple of the programs, but the teaching staff, the technical staff, and the academic staff did not want a waiver, did not encourage a waiver for other programs such as electrical and computer. So those students will be taking those competency tests. On another win-win note, Dauphin County VOTEC has intention and is well on its way to purchasing a vacant blighted home, dare we say, in Harrisburg to remodel. It is their construction trades groups, including electrical, including HVAC, and those groups that will be rehabbing the home with their instructors and, of course, licensed electricians, etc. So we only have 3 more things that have to be done on it: a buyer's note and a Permian mercantile note because we bought it. And right now I'm working with the city to waive the fees for like building permit and stuff like that, which are not excessive, but nonetheless, this is definitely a win-win. The students have an actual house to hone their skills on, and the city gets a rehabbed house. So, and hopefully this program will continue. In just a couple other little things, the students that are in the computer and technology fields at Dauphin County VOTEC have started the process and have completed much of it to update the website. And for the public, the website is dcts.org, and you can go on and see the programs and gather information that way. So that is kind of nice to have that in-house, and they're doing it. And we will have a final budget next month. And to see, we do know that healthcare is going to increase by 4.5%. And so that's my report for Dauphin County Technical School. And now just put my other hat on. The LERTA board did not meet. We will be meeting when their appeals come up. But the city is still under no in-person meetings or limited in-person meetings. So But until there's somebody who appeals the decision, right now, we will not meet in the interest of safety. And those are the reports. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Ms. Buckwalk. And yeah, Dr. Pluge did reach out to me last Tuesday. We had our monthly superintendent meeting with her, and we have our middle school team, our principals, looking at that declined application to see what we can do to obviously get that more in line with what we traditionally see. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Ms. Buckwalk, and just want to assure that it's something the administration is absolutely looking into, and our middle school principals are collaborating on some solutions to try to make that connection with our students. It's a very important program. We don't want our students missing out. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Selmer.
PSBA, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you. On March 22nd, which is next Monday, the Pennsylvania School Boards Association conducts their virtual advocacy. And it's going to be starting at 8:30 in the morning with a legislative update, always valuable half hour. Tune in. The information is available on the PSBA website. Register for the advocacy portion, which is it's all virtual this year. So it's they're scheduling appointments with our legislators to discuss some key issues. And what he's going to touch on during the legislative update, near and dear to our hearts in Harrisburg, charter reform. And for those of you that follow the advocacy, this year, I believe we are advocating for the three-tier funding formula for special education and other charter reform to limit the amount of money that goes out of our budgets and to our charter school students. Second is mandate relief. And this year, I'm hoping that the mandate relief advocacy this year is to include discussion of the value of the, there are a couple of mandate waivers that the Department of Education offers for things like construction projects so that the school districts would not be required to pay prevailing wage in certain instances or to follow a Separations Act, which requires that the school districts hire multiple prime contracts. The third item that they're emphasizing this year is school district systemic budget and funding pressures. No surprise, a lot of school districts are struggling with budgetary surprises during the pandemic year. Second item today, we did attend the March 10th Essentials of Board Leadership Conference. It's a virtual 4-part leadership workshop that empanels groups of board directors, board leaders, and superintendents from around the state, and gives the board directors an opportunity to talk to different school district board directors and leaders. For example, there were a number of representatives from the Bethlehem School District. So it gives us, as an urban school district, we don't often get to rub elbows with district school directors from the other third-class cities in Pennsylvania, and I think that's to our benefit. The last of the 4 Essentials of Board Leadership Conference will be on April 14th. And as an example, the emphasis in Leadership Conference number 3 was board professional development. And one of the ideas that came out of that was, I forget which school district it was, but they have a book club, and the board directors recommend titles that they like, and then they agree on reading certain books, and then they'll do a book club. This would be a great opportunity for us to do a book club format for things like the Dr. Samuel's recovery plan. We'd like to take the individual chapters of that and then read it and discuss. Finally, the National School Boards Association Advocacy Institute has been changed from an in-person to an online conference in early June, June 8 to 10. For those of you that know Ruth Cruz, she's the one who got me interested in the NSBA, the National School Boards Association, and specifically the Federal Relations Network. It's the same type of advocacy, but at the federal level. It gives us an opportunity to meet school board directors from other urban areas and all walks of life. And it's generally held in Washington, D.C. There is a $299 cost. What I would suggest is I will be happy to, anyone who wants to attend this, it is a 2-day virtual conference. So anyone who wants to attend this, we'll go together and figure out how to get one of our benefactors to donate the money needed to register so that you don't have to be money out of pocket to go and do this. And that is our report for this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you very much. And our final report is our Act 141 committee report. Mr. Thompson, leader, and Mr. Pittman.
Our last meeting was a continuation of what we've been doing the last couple of months, which is reviewing the recovery plan section by section with a bit of a deep dive going over some of the responses and that level of information. Beyond that, there was nothing new brought into it because the plan is still under review with PDE. That's what we have.
Thank you very much for sharing, Mr. Thompson, leader.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson, leader.
Before adjourning, I'd like to take a moment to thank everyone for sharing. Mr. Sommer, thank you for the updates in terms of returning to school opening, which is critical. Dr. Sneath, the updates in terms of school opening and the calendar review. Dr. Mumeen, the title updates and explanations, and knowing that there's additional information being made available to parents in the community. As tonight you walked us through the annual title federal programs meeting, which was very important for the district. Lots of really good information and details. And we look forward to additional information being continued. Lots of really key information shared tonight. And before we adjourn, I'd like to just add one other component, and that is it's been probably about 2 weeks now that we've mentioned, and Mr. Thompson, leader, mentioned that, we're doing things throughout the district to highlight and ensure that folks understand, what is actually in the amended recovery plan. What are the initiatives, how they impact the district, how they impact all of us, as we move forward. And one of the components consistent with the amended recovery plan is the transition of staff. We know that there are various positions, leadership positions in particular, that are contracted through the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit. And that contract runs through June 2022. And it is a very, very important goal that we remain cognizant of that, and that, to be very candid, The goal is to not have all of those positions, culminate at the same time. So there will be language to amend that whole process. But one of the positions that we have discussed transitioning, although it's 2022, but to have over a year in advance, is the superintendent's position. And so what is happening right this minute is that we're working with a search team to transition the superintendent's position. We are so grateful for all of the hard work that Mr. Selmer has done and that he continues to do so vigilantly, so graciously. But we're going to begin the process. And there are a couple things that are underway. There is a survey that's been posted on the website. We are inviting, looking to invite, input from our staff members, board members, the community, in terms of those qualities and characteristics that one would expect to see in a new superintendent. So there's a survey that's been posted, and also there is a focus group that will take place on Wednesday, March 17th at 6:00 p.m. Again, it will be facilitated so that there's information that is garnered from board members, from the community, from staff members. So I would encourage and ask that you look for the survey information and encourage and invite you to participate in the focus group. Again, the goal is to be transparent in the process and to involve everyone. And thank you very much, Mr. Nornhole, for posting the survey. The survey is very brief, it's anonymous, but yet we will learn from it as the leadership profile is developed. So on that note, once again, thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Selmer. And the goal is to have Mr. Selmer work with this new superintendent. This is such an important role, a very expansive role and critical, and to have at least, ample time to do that. But one thing that I will say in terms of starting early is that the goal is to find the most qualified, the most efficient person out there. And that's what we're, going to do in terms of this national search. So I don't know if you want to add anything, Mr. Selmer, before we actually adjourn the meeting officially.
I just look forward to working with you, Dr. Samuels, in your capacity as receiver. This is a great opportunity for the right person to come to Harrisburg and be the next superintendent. And I look forward to being part of that process to help recruit and also help support. Hopefully we find that candidate round one of this process. But if we don't, I'm here for some time yet to continue to support the district however you need me to do so. So I look forward to that. And before you adjourn, I just want to make one quick announcement. After we adjourn, there's a video that was produced by Ms. Keys and the team regarding our operations initiatives that are happening to get ready for school. So we can officially adjourn the meeting when you're ready, Dr. Samuels, but then we're going to play this video for anyone that wants to stay on after the meeting. It's about a 5-minute video, but you'll be able to visualize and see the initiatives that we spoke about this evening regarding some of the operations and the tasks that are being done to prepare for our return to school. So I just wanted to mention that. Mr. Nornhole will play that once you adjourn the meeting, if anyone would like to stay on and watch that. Thank you.
And thank you. And thank you very much for sharing that. And again, we salute and applaud you, and we look forward to some of the next steps. And on that note, I'd like to officially adjourn the meeting, but I'd also like to ask everyone who has participated as part of this meeting this evening to share information about the official reopening of schools, and to share some of the information, the wealth of information that you've heard this evening, so that a broader spectrum of our families are aware, and the broader Harrisburg community. So thank you, and we look forward to video on school opening, to know that we're taking this very seriously. And it's a very, very well thought out process and plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nornhold.
When the bus arrives at school, students will exit the bus one side at a time. Students will disembark, starting with those closest to the front of the bus and moving back until the entire side has exited. Then the other side will repeat the same procedure. Students exiting the bus will be screened by school staff before being allowed into the building.
Amidst the pandemic and trying to open up the schools safely, we're looking at a bunch of different measures to keep our students and our staff safe. A lot of places that you go to these days, they use a thermal thermometer, which they put to your forehead. So with having volume of students come in, we needed to find a better way so we don't bottleneck the students and we can still social distance. So I went and purchased some thermal imaging devices from a company called Night Owl. And there will be 2 of these set up in the lobby or the entranceway for every school. And what it does is it can monitor up to 10 temperatures per device per second. What we're really looking for is we're looking for students that come in with a temperature. And what will happen is it'll actually capture that student's photograph here on the screen. So a staff member can, guide that student to the side should they have a temperature that's above the CDC recommended guidelines.
How many temperatures per second can this device monitor?
This unit can handle 10 simultaneous infrared reads. So that's 10 students per second or 10 adults, whatever that quantity is. And we'll have 2 of these in each lobby. So we'll be able to get 20 students per second, get their temperatures captured. And if we have a high temperature, we'll definitely be able to detect that.
Good morning, Kiara. And dear C, good morning, Veron. Good morning, Judge Riel. Thank you for joining us today.
Craig Glass, Director of Operations. And what I want to show you is another safety feature that we've been taking care of here in the district. Is this is what's called a unit ventilator, and it's the primary source of fresh air to come in the building. Obviously, CDC guidelines strongly recommending that you have proper ventilation. What we've done is we've cleaned all these units up, replaced all the filters, and we do that on a regular schedule. And it is our primary intake, and as the weather changes and we start to get warm out, we also have most of our classroom windows are available to be open to get additional fresh air into the building. So that's a big help, and it's strongly suggested that these are steps that schools take to make it safe.
On behalf of the Harrisburg School District Administration, faculty, and staff, welcome back to school.
Very nice. Very nice.
Thank you very much for putting that together. Ms. Key's team, Mr. Glass will be doing autographs in front of Foose tomorrow for his role as the superstar there on the video. But no, all joking aside, again, we shared a lot of information last night, but that's really a good 5-minute video snippet that visualizes a lot of what we've been talking about and what we're putting in place. So again, thank you for allowing us, Dr. Samuels, to end the meeting and share that video with our.
Thank you. It's ending on a positive note. It's capturing all.
Thank you, everyone.
Night all.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Bye. Thank
Good
you.
evening.